Welcome to Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology. Today, Michael Suter has returned to continue last week's conversation about his new class, The Mysteries of the Zodiac, Finding Dionysus. Michael, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again.
It's good to see you, Ezekiel. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, always a pleasure. We were left with quite a few, or rather, I was left with quite a few questions I was wanting to ask you last time, but thankfully now we have a space to be able to get into that a little more deeply. So the first thing I wanted to get into is this concept of exaltation that you briefly touched on last time. What does it mean, or what does exaltation mean in the first place, and what does it mean for each of the planets? As you mentioned that it's not the same thing for each planet. There's like a specific connotation that's given to each one. Is that correct?
Yep, that is correct. Yep. Yeah. So as I mentioned last time, one of the most important things to understand about exaltation is that our definition really comes from the Bible. That is the best definition that we have, and we know that Jesus was exalted when he returned from the grave. So when he
Mm.
came back from his 3 days in the tomb, that is when Jesus became exalted. So for each of the planets, the exaltation basically is it means that they're returning from some sort of underworld journey. And we
Mm.
also have our fall. So we have the fall in the opposite sign. So we
Hmm.
can take it that basically they're getting in trouble somehow. They're falling into the underworld in the sign of their fall, and then they're making a triumphant return as a an exalted or messianic kind of character. One of the um, other figures in the Bible that is a messianic character is Melchizedek. This is
Hmm.
the priest king who shows up and is able to bless Abraham, even though Abraham was a king. So he has higher standing essentially than the king.
Oh.
So what we hear in standard astrological doctrine, pretty much, you'll hear that the exaltation is something like a visiting magistrate who's come and is able to make law, but is not, in fact, involved in the day-to-day of running of the kingdom. And it's a useful idea, and
Hmm.
it's not untrue. But if you take it into this religious sense, you get a much better idea of what exaltation is. And as I've mentioned, the Zodiac is a religious symbol, and it survived in synagogues and in churches. The synagogues we have up to like the 5th century of the Common Era. There was zodiacs on the floor of synagogues,
Mm.
especially in Nazarene Jewish synagogues, and it survived in Christian contexts up until about the 11th or 12th century. So it's a religious symbol, and it was able to maintain. They kept it as a symbol because it was not being used for horoscopic astrology. It's like simultaneously they were using it as a religious symbol and suppressing horoscopic astrology. So just to make that clear, we're talking about the zodiac as a religious symbol. So as far as exaltation goes, we can start with the sun, I guess, in Aries.
Yeah, right.
And that's one of the easiest ones to like kind of get your head around because this is the sun's journey into the underworld culminates obviously at the death and rebirth of the sun, which is of course the winter solstice. It
Hmm.
falls initially at 19 degrees of Libra, and that night the number 19, of course, comes from the 19 years approximately of the cycle of eclipses. So we get every 19, 18 or 19 years, it moves back. The eclipses come back to the same place, and eclipses are going backwards, obviously.
Mm.
So the sun is, it's very simple. It's the fertility, it's part of the fertility god. And one thing that's really important to understand is that some of these, when you have a exaltation, there's generally a sort of a combination, an archetypal combination of the host planet in which the exaltation is happening, and the ruler. So I spoke about this in Venus and Virgo. The sun sort of you could and you can look at it multiple ways, and I'm gonna give you a couple ways you can look at this. We have Mars and the sun, and we have like sort of a solar king. Mars, if you go back into Egyptian um, lore, there's a good deal of evidence to believe that Horus was in fact considered to be Mars. They often say in the
Hmm.
Egyptian texts that it was a morning star, but there's other things that they say that indicate that this planet, whoever whatever this morning star was, could be seen at the head of the sky, meaning that it could be seen in the 10th house. In which case, it could not be Venus, because Venus will never be visible in the 10th house, essentially at the top of the sky.
Right. Well, and that 10th house being Capricorn is the exaltation of Mars.
Exactly. Yes, that is in fact the exaltation of Mars, and we'll get to that too. That's another fascinating. That's one of the most interesting ones. They're all fascinating in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So we have this the fusion of Mars being the king archetype, because this is the masculine principle incarnate, essentially an embodied incarnate principle, and it's a fertility god as well. And we also know from tons and tons of mythology that the king is related to fertility. We have this from like the Fisher King, where the Fisher King is somehow he's becomes impotent, or he's got a wound to his thigh, which is often a metaphor for castration.
Mm.
So when he's not virile, he cannot, essentially, there'll be no fertility. So
Mhm.
Mars is a fertility god, and that's something we have to wrap our heads around. We get Mars, um, we get all the keywords for Mars, and those are like downstream, the ones we get, like violence. They're accurate. War, it's correct, but it's not at the root.
No, well, Mars
Um,
is libido as well. I mean, look at like Cernunnos or any of these other
Pronounce,
archetypal
yep,
gods. They're very phallic. They're very lusty, very virile. Just it's yeah, the masculine fertility archetype.
exactly, yep,
Right.
yep, yep. So Mars really takes that place, and no other archetype within the astrological pantheon that we have can really take that, because Jupiter's in the day sect. That's not an embodied masculine archetype.
Mm.
Um, so there's this Solar King idea, which is very Aryan, Aries.
Hmm.
That's totally appropriate. But the thing that I recently have been researching is the goddess, excuse me, Eos, of the goddess of the sunrise. And again, you might be like, okay, why is he talking about the sunrise? We're talking about the equinox. We're talking about Aries. But the thing is that if you look at the house system, and we're looking at the Thema Mundi, uh, our metaphor is always that the equinox is essentially the sunrise of the fertile season. It's the beginning
Mm.
of the fertile season. So the goddess Eos is the goddess of the sunrise, and she has really interesting mythology in that we all know that Persephone is abducted into the underworld, and we've located that. That happens in the seventh house as the life force is going underground. Eos is notorious for abducting young men,
Mm.
and especially abducting young men out of committed relationships. So the
Ah.
yeah, this is very interesting.
Huh.
The idea here is that when the life force enters the underworld, that's where commitments and agreements and the our contractual, engagements begin. It's where we make laws. It's the solar world. It's abstracted things that help us create government, help us create a more civilized society. So the fact that she is taking young men out of the metaphorically out of this masculine world where they're in a contract essentially, and then voiding that contract and bringing them back into this nighttime world of the goddess. So there's several masculine characters who are abducted by Eos, including Orion, Tithonus, and most interesting is a mythic character named Kephalos, which is Cephalos, which is the head,
Wow.
basically.
Well, the head
Yeah,
air
so it's
is Aries. So,
Aries.
so okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly. And what's most interesting about that one is she abducts him and she takes him and makes him become a priest in her nighttime temple. Now we have two sects, remember. We have Persephone getting abducted to become a part of the ruling class, essentially, to marry the king. Now this is he's getting abducted to become a part of the feminine religion. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? So he's becoming a part of the goddess cult.
Okay. Are these two cults
You see what I'm
connected
saying?
then? Like
Was
would
that?
hate would are these both of these cults then connected in a sense? Like if they're both underworld.
Yes.
So basically, would you say then that Hades and Eos are kind of counterparts?
I would
Hades
say
be
that they are functionally counterparts. They're
functionally.
doing the same function, which is essentially like fishing for people in the other sect to then bring into their sect. So
Right,
there's like
right.
a you could say it's like evangelizing or there's this in addition to it being a metaphor for the agricultural, obviously the life force goes into underground in the fall, and now it's
Sure.
starting to emerge.
But this is happening
Um,
in the opposite at the opposite
it's
gate. Like
happening
if Persephone
the
is
opposite
being
way.
abducted at Libra, Scorpio, kind of that area of
Yep.
the zodiac by
Yep.
Hades, right? Then Eos would abduct the young men at Aries, then, which would be the vernal
That's
equinox.
correct.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
Yep. And she's breaking the contracts, essentially. She's taking them out of committed relationships, breaking those contracts, and bringing them into the feminine world, which is a wild world. It's not a world of contracts.
Right now,
It's a world of
no laws.
no
It's
laws.
not Jupiter's order and order of the day and right. Not the solar. It's
Exactly.
not the solar
Exactly.
world. Okay, yeah, right.
Yep. Yep. So this is a really, and so this, you can then look at this archetype in, this solar archetype in Aries, then being the flip side, the feminine, where you could see that sun god in Aries being the goddess who brings the energy up and lifts it into the goddess realm, essentially. So Eos can be also be like, your exalted sun there, who's like the gateway into the goddess religion, if you
Okay.
will.
As a feminine son of sorts, then.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
As a feminine ruler of the sun or like an aspect of the sun, because she's
Okay.
the goddess of the sunrise,
I see.
essentially. Yep.
As we're talking about exaltation too, what degree is the sun exalted in Aries?
19.
19? That's okay. So it's exact opposite of the fall. So if
Yes, exactly.
right, the sun's
Yep.
falls in Libra at 19 degrees and exaltation at 19 degrees
Exaltation.
Aries.
Yep. So
Okay.
that's just the highest degree of exaltation. The sun is exalted from 0 degrees all the way up through the entirety of the sign,
Okay.
but the highest degree of exaltation is at 19.
Right at
Or
19.
shall
Okay.
we say the 19th degree, which is 18 actually. So including zero, it
Okay.
becomes
Well, see, if it was 19, it'd be interesting because, in the major arcana, 19 is the card for the sun too.
the
So I
sun.
thought that that's
Exactly. Yeah.
interesting too, that's not coincidence either. That, okay.
That's not a
That,
coincidence either. There's several of those that
well, of
are,
course,
yeah.
there are no coincidences in the mysteries in esoteric.
No,
But
no, they're
I didn't
not.
know that numerologically. I didn't realize that was the thing. Interesting.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
All right.
So, so yeah, so that's clearly the reemergence of the sun from an underworld. It's like this is our defining moment here in which we see that it's a sun's coming back from its underworld. So next we have the moon, which exalts at 3 degrees of Taurus, in the
Yeah.
third degree of Taurus.
Just a couple days from now. Or well, not
Yeah,
really. Well, kind of. Let's see. The moon's in Gemini right now, but okay. But anyway, the sun is just now into Taurus. But yeah, when the
the
moon comes
sun will be
around,
hitting the moons. Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
pretty soon.
we'll be
Pretty
hitting.
soon. Not quite,
Yep,
but
yep.
Three Taurus.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. Because the fall is
So
then by default then at three Scorpio. That would be the fall.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. The fall is at 3 degrees of Scorpio. So this is
Okay.
a really interesting, we get into some really interesting numerology here as well.
Okay.
Because this is, I don't know if I mentioned last time that this is the moon's exaltation at 3 degrees of Taurus is 33 degrees from the 0 point of the of the equinox. So this is
You did mention that.
33 degrees, and we know that Jesus, of course, was crucified at the age of 33,
Yes.
and the moon is the embodiment. So that's the exaltation is where the messianic figure becomes exalted. So, and that's his body
In the
dying,
flesh.
and,
Yes, yes.
yeah, and
Yep.
being and going into a higher realm. So that's so you can also look at that one now. If you 3 degrees of Taurus, 33 degrees minus 19 gives you 14, 2 weeks, basically
Mm.
2 weeks, 2 times 7. So there's a
Yeah.
2 week, which is interesting to say the least.
Hmm.
Um, when you get, you can go to the exaltation point of Venus, which is at 27 degrees of Pisces, which
Pisces.
then gives you 36 degrees difference. So, these are all like very significant. That's 36 is the number of decans, and,
Yeah, right, right. 36 degrees, what a difference between the moon? Is that what?
between the moon and Venus.
And Venus in their exaltation. Oh,
Venus's
okay.
exaltation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's all
Fascinating.
sorts of hidden messages here. I haven't found all of them, but I know, there's a ton of them there.
Yeah, dig them
Um,
out. Yeah. Fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a lot. I've been doing a ton of, I've been rereading the hymn to Demeter like every couple of days and finding more stuff that
Hmm.
makes me believe that Homer actually knew that this was what was going on. And I could read you like things that out of the hymn to Demeter in which they're talking about Demeter coming down and having aspect to people, using the word aspect,
Aspect. Okay.
specifically these astrological terms. So it's like once you start seeing it, it's like it's really, it's quite
Mm.
remarkable. I think that this astrological language was already like in play. So okay, so in any case,
Mm. No, it seems, yeah, very
not to
interesting.
digress too much. So the moon's exaltation, that's as I said, that's 33 degrees. And that number, of course, that didn't begin with Jesus. That was,
No,
one of
well, no.
these extremely, the Masonic orders using 33 degrees. That didn't begin with them. That goes
Mm.
back to to these goddess cults again. That's, that number is,
Yeah, well, three is the feminine number too. I kind of correlate it to the moon. Well, because
right.
the third house is also the house of the moon, right? As we were talking
The
about
moon's
before.
the moon's joy.
Yeah,
Yes.
the moon's
Yeah.
joy,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yep.
very
Yep.
creative number.
So,
Hmm.
and we can also going back to the the moon's fall, as we know that the Via Combusta goes from about 15 degrees of
Libra.
Libra to 15 degrees of Scorpio, and that is
Yeah.
an interesting thing itself because Abu Mashar says that it goes from the 19th degree of Libra, the sun's fall to the third degree of Scorpio. So there's a lot of kind of uncertainty around that, and a lot of people say that doesn't even work. That there is no via combusta. Some
Hmm.
people, so it to me in a way it seems like the via combusta is a was actually an attempt to bring the hymn of Demeter into astrology, and people never really understood it properly.
Nobody caught
So,
on to it.
yeah,
No one caught on to what it was actually being said there or embedded. It's kind of okay, kind of cryptically hinted at.
exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's something that was kind of lost. And
Hmm. Sure.
so we know that she starts lamenting when she realizes that her daughter is in the underworld.
Hmm.
So we can assume too that once Venus is back, which and her exaltation is right before she emerges, that the moon essentially is at this place where she's got her daughter back and she's able to like nurse her or like bring her up, and she's fully allowing the foliage to grow again. So it's like,
Hmm.
it's like maybe in Aries, the we're not sure. It's like things are just coming up. It's like, and it's a Venus, of course, is in her detriment in Aries because she's masculinized at that point. Because
Hmm.
she's if you look at the life force as a continuum, it's like it becomes masculinized as it goes into the underworld, and it becomes more and more masculine, and then as it emerges masculine, and then becomes feminized. Essentially, it becomes, you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
So,
Hmm.
so as she enters Aries, she's in detriment. She's lost her queenship of in the underworld. She's now back under her mother. She's not in rule. But when she gets into Taurus, she is in fact in rule. And her mother is totally joyous that her daughter has returned. So those are some of the ideas of the moon's exaltation. It's like this joyousness of the two goddesses are together, and they're then able to like nourish the life force, and they bulk it up and give it all, everything it needs after it's emerged into this into the world with Demeter as opposed to being with Hades. So that's the moon. There's other, you can find other meanings of these exaltations, but these are the things that I especially find to be true, at these in these places. So next we have Jupiter's exaltation in
Cancer.
Cancer.
Yes.
So this is a very interesting one because if you look at triplicity within these exaltations, you'll find, the sun is in the sun's correct element when it becomes exalted. The moon is in Earth, which is
Hmm.
correct. It's got triplicity. Jupiter is not.
Hmm.
Jupiter is in a water sign. And it's also, if you look at the Thema Mundi, it's beneath the horizon. So it's Jupiter at 15 degrees of Cancer is the myth that you need to understand for this one, and this one comes up a couple different times, is Zagreus. This is or the baby Zeus, as baby Zeus is hidden away in a cave, away from Saturn's gaping maw when he's trying to eat all of his children. So
Hmm.
this is where Jupiter is far away from where he rules. He's like, he's infantilized essentially because this is in completely in the goddess's realm here. This is not in his realm. So, this is, you got to get the childish kind of thing is one of the possibilities here. The other possibility is the fully, grown Zeus with Demeter. And Zeus, of course, protects Demeter and tries to make Demeter happy again when her daughter is lost. So Demeter essentially returns the favor to Zeus. So Zeus
Hmm.
gets his protection essentially in this foreign territory. And it's also well known in astrology that the Jupiter and Moon combination is the most fertile combination, and this is at
Hmm.
the height of the fertile year. So we can, look at that 15 degrees of Cancer as being, this is the
15 degrees. Okay.
all of these things. It's definitely the mother and child, and it also gets a little into like the what's called a mother-son cult thing in which the
Okay. That's where that comes from. This idea of like a son lover kind of,
son lover,
yeah. Right. Where this,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and that's that's definitely not something that is acceptable within our society right now. But this
Well,
is something
sure.
that was
But
deep.
going
Yeah, this it
beyond,
doesn't.
getting into the
We're
mindset of how they thought, never mind what's
exact
conventional. I mean, I'm not interested in that either. Just I want to understand this just from their point of view, how they understood
exactly.
these things. And
Yep,
it's
and that's where we got to go. We got to go with what was true then.
metaphorically,
Uh,
what's being communicated there, do you think? Like, and 'cause you said
in
it's the
terms
most,
of
well, just, okay, with Jupiter being in Cancer has to do like with well, with the home and protection, like you're saying, is Jupiter playing the
Right.
child role then here? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
okay?
definitely. This is you can't really be in the moon's in the embodied realm
The
in the fourth house and not be, it's kind of subordinate to the goddess.
So the moon
Um,
protects Jupiter in this case because Jupiter's still like kind of
yes,
defenseless in this case. But then later Jupiter
right.
also will receive the moon. Well, they have a good relationship in astrology anyway.
Exactly. Yep, yep. That's
Then
one of those things like
like
anytime you see a baby in mythology, we're talking a chthonic god. This is a fertility thing. Babies are always fertility. It's like,
hmm
there's nothing anything but, nothing but fertility if we're talking a baby.
It makes me think also of the story of the baby Moses, that was rescued
Yeah,
by Pharaoh's daughter and then raised in the temple. And well, some people think that this is really just Akhenaten, essentially. If we want to go
right.
there, if we want to
Right,
go
right.
there with that, kind of correlate Jupiter with that. I don't know if you found an interesting tie in with that. Uh,
Yeah,
it-
yeah, 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 absolutely. No, that's one of the potential stories that goes along with this. Anytime we've got a orphan baby that's being raised, this also I mentioned Demophon too previously in our last conversation.
mhm.
The goddess trying to give immortality to the
Ah, yes.
to a baby. So this is, you can think about that here. There's other things too, there's a lot of them. The imparting of immortality. This is as far as you can get into the goddess's territory here. So this is the embodied realm, essentially. This is like an entry point too for again, the phallic kind of idea of the joining of the god and the goddess here. And if we look across the Zodiac again, it's good to look because it's often defined. The story of the sign where the archetype falls gives you often as much, if not more, information than where they're exalted. So
Okay.
in the this is the same story essentially. It's where the baby Zeus is underground and being hidden from the gaping maw of Saturn in the middle of the winter, where he's gone underground.
Ah, yes, yes,
So
yes. In Saturn's
across
realm, in
yeah,
Capricorn,
in
which is
Saturn's realm.
Saturn, exactly. Okay, yeah. So 15
Yep,
degrees, 15 degrees Capricorn would be the fall of Jupiter.
it would be the fall of Jupiter. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then there's we've talked about the decans too before. The first decan of Capricorn is a Jupiter decan, so
Uh-huh.
we could go over that whole
I did want to ask you
the
about
way
that
this whole
later.
thing.
That was one of my next
Yeah,
questions. Once we've gone through the rest of the
through this.
exaltations,
Yeah.
I definitely would like to
Yep.
touch on that a little more.
Yeah,
That's
this whole thing's like a big spider web, essentially. It's like you start pulling on threads and it's like you
yeah,
get more and more information.
it's endless, isn't it?
Oh.
Do you want to do Mercury
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, let's do Mercury. We talked a little about Mercury last time because this is one of the defining signs because people have been confused for like thousands of years why you can have a archetype that's both in exaltation and in rulership in the same place because
Mm-hmm.
nobody really understood and everybody was going by these more like political royal kind of metaphors which are again they're correct but they don't capture this religious sense.
Mm-hmm.
So in Virgo, Mercury has to rule because he's the one who can shepherd the life force into this through the season in which, this he's the humane archetype, he's the most human, and he's the
Mm-hmm.
one who deals with the flesh of the goddess. Essentially, he's the reporter who tells
Mm-hmm.
us what's really there. So he needs to examine the goddess as she really is.
Well, take an account for the harvest because that's the season we're in
Yeah,
too. So yeah,
yeah,
counting
this is
everything
exactly it.
as you say in your book to make sure it's all pristine and ready to go to market. Everything has to be without any blemishes, perfect and
Yeah.
and ready to go, right?
Yeah, and this is why Venus falls because she doesn't like that. She doesn't
Mm,
want to have her flesh examined in this way. Because it's
hmm.
demeaning, and she'd prefer to just be the dream of Venus
Pisces,
of
yeah.
yeah in Pisces, which is
Hmm.
under the Jupiterian expansive, all faith-based. We love what's coming. We're desperate for her. We love her, and
Hmm.
here she's fully here, and she's the core. She's this is the most powerful archetype of ancient times is the virgin, And we have a really hard time understanding this now. This was,
Mm,
and it didn't even necessarily mean virgin in the sense that we have now. It didn't necessarily mean purity of body, rather this like purity of mind and the highest expression of female sexuality. And this is
uh-huh.
what
Well, the Vestal
in
Virgins,
what's that?
the Vestal Virgins, for example,
Yeah, the
the
Vestal Virgins had that particularly Saturnian aspect to them, in which they were like literally guarding the fire, Saturnian fire of the nation. The fire that they guarded and tended was considered to be like Saturn himself in the Orphic hymns is called the great fire of man, the root fire of man.
hmm
So this is a very Saturn. The Vestal Virgins have that very Saturnian aspect to them. The core is this is why one of the reasons that Virgo as a sign gets associated so much with the sixth house that the which is kind of the Cinderella house.
hmm
It's like the taking care of your body and like, a
hmm
lot of people have very bad associations with Virgo. And this is very wrong because Virgo is, this is the maiden at the very peak of her sexuality. This is an extraordinary power in this goddess religion. And this is where this is why people haven't understood the Zodiac for the last 2,000 years, essentially, is that this has been suppressed. The goddess cults, the mystery cults, which in many ways Virgo was the place for these. This is the highest level of this before the life force Zoe descends into the underworld. So
hmm
so we know why Mercury rules here because he has this propensity for examining things, and he's gonna make some money off it in the deal too. Just this is a very human place.
Of course.
But it's also at the end of the season is where um, he goes into he descends into the underworld to bring Persephone essentially through into the next world. So it's this psychopomp kind of idea that Mercury embodies the ability to go up, the ability to go down. Here he's going down, and he's going down with the Virgin. And this is a very important thing because, as I think I mentioned last time, this is also Hecate.
Yeah,
Hecate
yeah.
has this protective
hmm
sense where she's a very much a highly exalted feminine Mercury archetype who protects the life force the whole way that it's underground. And
mm
just while we're on Hecate, when Persephone was presented the four seeds of the of by Hades, Hecate was there and said, "Don't do it." She said to Persephone, "This is a trick. Don't do it." But Persephone did it anyway. So Hecate's got a very uh, vital role in in the mythology of Persephone.
Right. And with the seeds, what that's alluding to is that's like a sexual thing, essentially.
That is a sexual thing, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And those four seeds were the four seasons again. So this is like
Uh-huh.
so each seed represents a different season, and each of the seasons is a dying and rising god. So the whole idea of a dying and rising god is extremely important and one that's lost, even though it's the center point of Christianity. It's an agricultural term, and it's sort of the bridge between, when we talk about Persephone, that people can get confused because we're talking about an anthropomorphized character that also represents the life force itself, which is Zoe, which is Eve, all of these things. And
hmm
if people want to get more information about that, I have a series of pieces on Substack, which are going to be a book very shortly about esoteric masculinity and the way and sort of the way this archetype has transitioned from agriculture to being a human. Uh, the bridge between the agricultural world and the human world. It's a whole, it's something that takes a lot of explaining exactly how that works in terms of ancient thinking. So I put a lot of thought into that, and I've got like basically a book about that if people want to read that.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Good to know.
So so yeah, so 15 degrees of Virgo is the fall, excuse me,
That's
the
Pisces.
exaltation.
Yeah.
Yeah, of Pisces,
So
and then
what?
15.
15 degrees of Pisces is the fall.
Yep.
What can we gain of the understanding of the of Mercury in the fall on the other end
Right.
of the zodiac then?
Yeah. Yep. So these signs, the Pisces Virgo thing is just one of the most fascinating, axes on the zodiac, and it was my investigation of those two signs that I feel like really cemented a lot of my ideas about astrology in general because of what
Hmm.
goes on in the signs. Mercury's fall is his accompanying of the Chore now potentially masculinized or not
Hmm.
um, in Pisces back up into the world in which the world of Demeter essentially. So
Hmm.
calling one a fall and calling the other because they're both going up and down, essentially because that's what he does.
Right,
This
right.
is sort of the exaltation and the fall. He's in fall because he's taking orders from Zeus. That's one of the things is like Zeus orders Mercury to go into the underworld to find Persephone and to convince her to come back out into the world. So
Hmm.
there's a significant part of the hymn to Demeter in which he's called the Slayer of Argos when, one of those epithets that follows Mercury. So he has to go down into the underworld and find her and convince her to come back up. That is apparently that's less of that's a fall for him to have to do that. But then he emerges into his joy. So it's like, you know, um, that's one of those things. It's not,
Right, in the first house, which is maybe a little confusing to think about because of the zodiac depends which way we're looking at it. If we're going
right.
up like or counterclockwise, like if we're
Yeah.
looking at it in the house scheme, the 12th house being Pisces, let's say, just for the sake of keeping the
Yeah. For
natural
Thema
zodiac
Mundi,
here.
yes.
So Saturn, so not Saturn. So Mercury is in fall because he's literally falling from the 12th down into the first, which is then his
Yes.
joy.
Yes. Exactly.
Whereas in if you're thinking about it just metaphorically like an underworld, he's going up because he's coming up
Yes.
out of the underworld up and then into Aries, which would be the springtime and well, up into the solar
Yep.
world once again. So
Yep. Precisely.
it's just a
Yep.
matter of how you want to have that picture in your mind because
Yeah.
you can say up, but at the same time he's also going down as in
Is
on the wheel.
yeah. Yeah.
He's falling on the wheel, but at the end he's really just going back to the helm, which is that midpoint, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is where
Yep.
he's most
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So this if you've taken the class, you'll find as you move into it, I try to
Hmm.
be very careful to associate his time in the Aries through Virgo with being with Demeter as opposed to being with Hades. Because if you try doing the up and down thing, it gets very confusing. Because the upper world is down, the underworld is up. If you're looking at the zodiac as
Or how
so
you flip
it's
it. Or also, if you want to look at this, think about the solstices. Essentially, the summer solstice is supposed to be up, so that would put Cancer in where the
right.
10th house position would be, and it would flip it and put Capricorn down in the fourth. But
Yeah.
we don't do
Yep.
it like that way when we're looking at the natural
No,
zodiac. The
you
fourth is
don't.
Cancer,
No.
the 12th, the 10th is Capricorn. So yeah, it's just a matter of
Right.
how you want to look at the wheel, which way you're going. Just for people that maybe are
Yeah.
new to astrology, to not get confused about that point. It's
Yeah.
just a different way of looking at it, but it's all the
Right.
same, really.
Yep, and it's from whatever perspective you're in. As I said last time, the seventh house is the first house of the masculinized part of the zodiac. So you got
Yeah.
to then you start from seven, and you have that's why the all of the joys are mirrors of each other essentially.
Hmm.
So the whole it's a mirror zodiac, and that's again why when I was talking about Eos, you get this mirror story in which the exact same, the function of like breaking contracts and moving into becoming a part of the goddess's temple,
Mm.
essentially, is what you have these, so it's a really interesting and consistent set of mythology when you look at it. Really quite remarkable. So, yeah, so moving on, we can talk a bit about, I talked, I think, fair amount last time about Saturn. So, Saturn's exaltation, I said 15 degrees, and some people do say 15 degrees. The accepted
Of
degree
Libra.
is 20, of Libra is
Hmm.
21. That's
Really?
most people.
21.
Yep.
Wow. Well, that's my son. So that would say a lot about me then.
Ah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm
Yeah.
very Saturnian, so that's one way I
Oh,
would
yeah.
describe myself, honestly, more than anything else. People want to put a
Okay.
label on me or ask me. Fascinating. So
Yeah. Yo, so
21 degrees Libra. That's the
yep,
exaltation you
21
said.
degrees Libra. Yep,
Okay.
that is Saturn's degree of his exaltation.
Huh.
So this
And that's the second decan too. So I don't mean to get into the decans, but I'm just fascinated. That would be the right, the
it's actually the
second,
third.
oh, right,
It's the
right,
third.
21 degree,
Yep.
yeah, into the third, right,
Yep.
which is
Yep. Which is Mercury and Jupiter.
Mercury, Jupiter. That's right. Okay, rule.
Yeah. Yeah. So and those
We'll get to
degrees of
that.
exaltation, they're not like set in stone. This is one of these things that I think there is some argument amongst like ancient authors about these things.
Hmm.
The second decan of Libra is the Saturn decan. So
That's right. That's right.
um,
Hmm.
now there's some reasons to believe because of the like ancient locations of fixed stars that some of these places may have been the place of that fixed stars were in the deep past. Like
Like
some people say,
Spica, right? Like Spica, that's pretty close one.
Spica, yep, Spica is very close.
Uh-huh.
But you would have found like about 3,000 years ago or so, 4,000 years ago, Antares would have been
That's the other one that came to mind.
found.
Antares, right? Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, which would be interesting because Antares, Saturn is kind of the anti-Aries, but that's not how
Anti-Aries.
we generally think it's like somebody can go up against Aries and is very martial. So
Hmm.
there's a certain amount of confusion with that because like Set, who's often syncretized with Saturn, is actually in a lot of ways more Mars. We have like Aries isn't quite Mars that we astrologers use.
Yeah, I think of Set as being more
Aries,
Mars. Definitely.
yeah. Set is also got a lot to do with foreign lands, as I mentioned, and excessive dryness, which is also Mars.
Hmm.
Excessive dryness.
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with Abu Mashar has some nice uh, like tables where he puts the masculine planets on an axis of hot and cold and the feminine planets on wet and dry essentially. So
Wet
the
and dry.
moon and
Okay.
Venus are on the wet side and Mars sits on the dry side
Oh,
and Jupiter and the sun sit on the warm hot side and Saturn sits on the cold side.
sure.
So
Hmm.
most astrologers would say that Mars is actually hot and dry, and I think that's true for the most part
Hmm.
for our purposes. And Saturn is cold and dry. Saturn's
Definitely.
not wet.
No, no, I
So
would say.
because representing the root, he's got to be dry. You don't want to be excess wet at the root. So
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, and
so
Saturn doesn't do very well in water signs anyway. So
no, 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 especially not in, Pisces or any of them actually.
no,
He
or
is pretty
Cancer,
poor.
right, right. Uh-huh.
Or Cancer at all, where
At
yeah, he's in
all.
detriment.
Exactly. So
Yeah, yeah,
okay. No, yeah, I think of,
yeah.
yeah, air, Libra, of course, right? And Aquarius, he also rules Aquarius, so the two air
Yep,
signs, and then Earth, Capricorn.
yep.
So
And
definitely
and
dry.
he does it doesn't do terribly in Gemini, even though that's a it's he does well in air according to my like astrological thinking because as I mentioned, he gives weight to ideas. So it's
Sure.
like he can actually help you potentially determine which ideas are good and which ones are bad if you
Hmm.
use this properly. So Saturn in Gemini, even though it's not his scene necessarily, it's with the goddess. I mean, it's an underworld. So as I've said before, he falls on 21 degrees of
Aries.
Aries. So
Uh-huh.
basically, from that point on, he's undergoing an underworld journey.
Hmm.
And as I mentioned, Saturn works with ideas and concepts, and he gives them gravitas and gravity,
Hmm. Hmm.
and creates consequences for breaking laws. When Saturn gets into the embodied realm, it becomes more problematic because you don't want heaviness and that kind of rigidity that he tends to give. Like he's good with bone to a certain extent, but
Hmm.
not really that much because your bones should be wet and there should be a lot of marrow in them and he would tend to dry them out and make them more brittle like bones after death are more what Saturn's all about.
Mm.
So he's not welcome, and I use the term irrelevant. He becomes somewhat irrelevant as he goes through the realm of the goddess. When he does have impacts, they're generally not good. Again, it's like impacts in the embodied realm of Saturn are necrotic. They have to do with death. They have to do with things becoming rigid and painful and old and
Yeah,
diminution, that kind of thing.
exactly.
But as he emerges, so as he's having the opposites, of the sun, essentially, he's and his um, he basically comes into the underworld at the equinox, and then it's 21 degrees later that he exalts. I'm not sure exactly. That's 3 weeks essentially. There is the number 21 with Saturn is like now it's usually 28 to 12 is the ratio of Saturn to Jupiter, essentially, when you get like the length of their orbits. You know what I'm saying? So it takes about
Okay.
28 to 30 years for Saturn to get all the way through his orbit, and Jupiter takes 12, which is a mirror of the
Ah,
sun
yes.
moon. The sun moon aspect. So the moon's taking 28 days, the sun's taking, 12 to get through the 12 months to get through the same
Yeah,
amount of
yeah.
time.
I see.
So I think there's something in there with the 21. I'm not absolutely sure. That's something.
Yeah, also,
Um,
look, just
the
give me
jury's
my
out on that one.
sure, sure. With you saying 21, going back to the tarot and the major arcana, what card 21 of the arcana is the world, which is
Is the
also ruled by
world, yeah,
Saturn. So that's
which is
interesting.
ruled by Saturn.
Interesting.
Yep.
A lot of this correspondences with the degree of exaltation corresponds to the exact major arcana ruled by that same planet.
Yes,
Seems
exactly. Yep,
seems to be the
yep, yep.
case. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's yep. When you get to Venus, of course, that's 27, so we're past the 22, and Mars is 28 of the
Well,
uh
it could reduce it, and maybe you'd get something in that with the gematria. Just I don't know, adding it up and
yeah,
reducing
exactly.
it. Probably play with it,
And that
and
I have
yeah.
no doubt you can probably do that, but that's
Mhm.
something that we'll leave the jury out on that one for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you want to do
so
Mars real quick?
yeah, we can do Mars.
And
We're
then
probably
what was the other one we had? Was because you had
Venus is the
and
last
then Venus. Yeah,
one.
just Mars and Venus. Yeah.
Yep. So the first thing we get, so exaltation, again, this is a return from the underworld. And the reason that there's many reasons for Mars to be an exaltation in Capricorn. This is as far as you can get outside of the fertile year. So this is when Mars's expression becomes much less agitated, essentially. He's literally under the thumb of Saturn here. So this is actually good for Mars because Mars is all about service, essentially. It's like in when he's with the goddess, he serves the goddess. There can be no question, in even though he's in the places he rules, he serves the goddess. When you get up into the eighth house, this is like he actually sort of takes the goddess down there, but he guides her into like teaches her about the intrigue again and prepares her to deal with conflict in the eighth house. I mean, everything is about the goddess essentially. The whole Zodiac is about the goddess. So
Mm-hmm.
um, so the other place, in Aries, this is where the sun returns to the upper world. And in Capricorn, this is where the sun has just gone through its death and rebirth. So Mars is this the shepherd of the life force through death and rebirth. So the presence there with the sun in being as a being reborn is completely makes sense. That you're gonna have there's a type of rebirth, so you're gonna find Mars there.
Okay.
Um,
What degree is Mars exalted in?
28. 28, that's generally the
28.
28, yep.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a couple other arguments for different degrees of Capricorn. If you go into like the literature, I think there's like 18 is one of them, maybe I forget, it's like 10. So there's some other, but the standard wisdom right now is 28.
Okay.
Um, Again, I'm not absolutely sure exactly why 28. That's something that would need to be investigated further. Um, so yeah, this is of course this is the root of the tree of life. So this is where the the root needs defending. This is where your soldier is going to have his greatest capacity. He knows the territory. He's going to be able to defend the territory against anybody. This is where he knows exactly what he's doing. This is a fertility god in service of protecting the root of power, essentially. So Mars in Capricorn.
Right. So then in the fall, 28 degrees of Libra would be the fall degree for Mars.
It would be of the fall degree of it would be Cancer.
I'm sorry, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cancer,
Yeah, that's
Cancer.
correct.
Right, right, right. Right.
Yep, Cancer.
And yeah, so 20, 20, what, I don't know, interesting bits of information have you maybe gleaned out of that, of the, in regards to being
So yeah,
the,
that is that is the realm of the goddess. That's the nighttime realm of the goddess. This is a an archetype who is excessively hot. This is the other thing when we go on the
mm-hmm,
uh on this axis, he's dry and he's hot. So
mm-hmm,
in the summertime, added excess heat is, of course, unwanted.
sure.
So, his fall
Especially in the
here is
home,
like in the home.
especially,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Mm,
Yeah. So all of the reasons that you do not want Mars domestically in your house, particularly,
yeah.
it's a wild
Yeah, it's like lighting a fire, like
archetype.
lighting the chimney in the middle of the hot summer. Like, why would you want to
Yeah,
have that?
exactly. It's
It's
not
just,
like it's unwanted,
yeah.
and it's and essentially he goes into his underworld for that
Mm,
part of the of the year. And again, it kind of follows the sun. I've always like kind of felt like this is the main thing is that he's following the sun. And he's
mm-hmm,
sort of a Mars is the son of the sun, essentially. This is the the embodied god in Aries. And then he falls in Cancer, and then he's like he's that fertility god who's got to be there when the sun goes through that rebirth. So it's like, the two have to be together, essentially. Like to shepherd through a birth, you got to have Mars there, essentially.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, in Cancer, you've got as I mentioned before, you've got the exaltation and the rule of Saturn in Capricorn. So then, the both of those, both of the most unstable archetypes are in their detriment and their fall in Cancer
Yeah.
under
Mm-hmm.
this, so this is you don't want that essentially in the goddess's belly, essentially there, where she's got, this is where she's gestating
Sure. It's a very
Zeus,
sensitive
essentially.
place.
It's a very sensitive place, yeah. So any kind of, and it, as of course, Cancer is extremely sensitive. So
Mm-hmm.
this is like, emotionality is really poorly affected by excessive cold and excessive hot. It's like having a bipolar kind of thing going on where you've got like, you're going to like these two extremes and you don't want that. You want to feel just right in it because the Cancer is all about feeling right. And it's also like it's between the joys of the moon and Venus. So it's like really sitting in that that most
Mm-hmm.
feminine place.
Right.
And it's just they're very unstable, essentially. Too hot, too cold, too dry, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right, right.
so yeah. So moving to Pisces, the 27th degree of Pisces. So this is where she's about to be, emerge into the upper world with
Venus.
her mother.
Right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, of course, the life force itself. The 3 degrees, again, this is like the 3 degrees gets that, it's that feminine number. It's the number of days that, Jesus stays in the tomb before he comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So having that Venus there is kind of, again, marking that Jesus character sort of. Um, if you there is a correlation between Mars and so Mars into 28th degree of Capricorn is in a sextile to the degree after um, Venus emerges, essentially gets exalted. And she gets exalted in Mars's decan, which is doubly Mars. The last decan of Pisces
Yeah,
is
yeah, right,
extremely
right.
Mars. So
Hmm.
it's like she's being delivered essentially into the arms of Mars at that point. And
Hmm.
we can say, the Mars.
Is he like sustaining her kind of in a way? Because this brings to mind what you said about him being Atlas, but on the other side of the Zodiac.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Kind of like delivering her down into the or up into this world.
Is this
It's like,
like the knight in shining armor carrying the maiden, like essentially out of the
yeah,
castle, kind of,
exactly. Yep.
that kind of imagery? Okay.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
acting as kind of
Yes, that's chivalric.
a sustaining force, just to
Yeah.
help her
Yep.
break through, I guess, the ground even to get up out into the light,
Right.
essentially too.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what, the traditional thing is that Mars is the only archetype that has the intestinal force to be
Because
able to move things into the next realm. Essentially, he's like
right.
literally
It's like
forcing it up.
digging the literal tunnel as they're coming up and out from the cave
Yeah.
below. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
The
Tilling the ground. You got that idea too of like tilling the ground so the seeds can go in so then it can sprout, that kind of thing. So
yeah,
there's a lot of different metaphors you can use, but it's sort of
for
that
sure.
agricultural worker, the guy with the axe who's like, the axe can be used to cut down the trees and also, it can be used then to like, hack somebody apart.
Hmm.
So it's like it's potentially civilizing, but also potentially destructive, just as the phallic principle can be, it can be pushed down again into the goddess, or it can be used to create civilization. That's the Mars goes both ways. They're a double-headed axe. Either it creates civilization or it, puts all its energy back into the goddess, essentially, physically and sexually. Um,
Right.
so yeah, so you get a very strong Mars presence there in that last decan of Pisces. Again, this is like the fruit, the seed of the fruit. That's another thing that's masculinized because in this point, it's a seed. Basically, it's a seed or a shoot that's coming up from the ground that Venus represents. She's the life force, and it has to have this masculine aspect to it, coming out of the earth, essentially. It's got to have that martial breaking through, which again is why Venus, she gets to a highest point of exaltation, and then she falls into detriment, essentially, because she has to fight for her life, essentially. She's got to come up and break through the ground, and all of these metaphors of being in like competition. Now she's also now once she gets into Aries, she's got to push up towards the sun, which is exalted at the 19th degree. So it's
Mm-hmm.
that relationship of breaking ground and looking upwards towards the exalted sun.
Yeah, sure, sure. So would you say
Yeah.
then with Venus and Aries, Persephone kind of also becomes, or Venus, if we're talking about just Venus is the broad archetype, kind of a warrior as well at this point?
Yeah.
Is there another goddess or archetype you could maybe correlate that's more specific to Venus and Aries, just for that
Well,
particular
I mean,
section?
Athena
Athena,
is because Athena's sprouts from the head
uh-huh,
of
Of Zeus, right, right. Okay, that's who
yeah,
was coming to mind. But okay, so yeah,
yeah.
you'd make
Athena
that
is
correlation there.
Athena's the perfect one there. I mean,
Okay.
that's the other thing too, is because she's so androgynous, basically, that Athena is extremely androgynous as a goddess. Athena is the actual mythology of Athena is very interesting because she is a Kore. She's a virgin, and she was actually,
Mm-hmm.
she's known for uh, with the Gorgon, basically with the Medusa,
Medusa, yeah,
but
yeah.
she actually was a Medusa. She was a priestess
Hmm.
of the Amazon tribe, according to history.
Okay, the Amazon warriors.
Yeah, so she was an Amazon essentially.
Uh-huh,
So
uh-huh.
she was a masculinized woman who took that role within a society that was dominated by women, essentially.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's and again emerging from the head of Zeus, and Zeus is the Age of Aries, essentially, when a lot of these mythologies were created, was it was Zeus was the god, the astrotheological
Deity of the
god
time.
of the Age of Aries.
Hmm.
And when we moved into Age of Pisces, logically we'd be moving towards Mars as we move inwards, because the Age of Taurus was ruled by Saturn, the golden age of Saturn.
Okay.
Yep.
Word, right.
Um,
I've heard that. Yeah, yeah. But word,
so yeah,
this has nothing obviously to do with rulership or exaltation. But
no,
in what sense were you alluding to that Mars would be the ruler as we move into Pisces?
because dynastically they're moving inwards, essentially. So astrotheologically, we're talking
Oh,
about
okay.
eons.
So are you talking about kind of the Chaldean order of descent a little bit?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yep. A dynastic order going
Right,
from the age of
right,
Taurus,
Saturn to
yep,
Jupiter, right, and then you go over to
Saturn
Mars.
to Jupiter,
Then you'd be
Mars.
sun. Then would be the sun. I guess would be the next one for
Yeah, which
Aquarius.
Aquarius, yeah. So
Okay,
that technically would be the Earth, actually. Like if you want to,
or Earth. Okay.
yeah, yep. It's a humane sign, so yeah, and that's pretty problematic in a lot of ways. So, and it
Hmm.
is the sun, but it's if you have the sun, in
Going
it,
the Chaldean order, yeah. After Mars comes the
it
sun,
would be the
but
sun.
I see what you're
Yeah.
saying in terms of
Yep.
Aquarius being definitely more Earth in that sense of talking about
Yep.
humanity.
Yeah. So
Okay,
this is
collectives.
where we get like I've done all this research into who is Dionysus in terms of the planets, and Dionysus's primary rule, the thing that he's most associated with is frenzy, not wine. Wine is a downstream.
Hmm.
It's frenzy, and
Okay.
frenzy is actually, like Odin is actually known as a god of frenzy as well. Poetry,
Okay.
but
Okay.
frenzy, this aspect. So it's a very masculine thing, this frenzied kind of, and that's again, it's very appropriate to this realm of the goddess, in which, Mars is very much. There's nobody else you would look to really be this. A god of frenzy. You wouldn't think that Jupiter, it's not Saturn, that's for sure. Um, so Mars, in a lot of ways, is this occulted aspect of Dionysus. Um, and Mars, if you think about um, the energy of the male being going back into the female
Hmm.
and living by her rules, that's Mars. That's the fertility god Mars. You think about like wine. Oh, most people think that must be Venus, but not necessarily, because this is a male god playing by the rules of the goddess,
I see.
essentially. So it's like if you also bring Mars, the Roman god, back to his roots, he was a fertility god who became associated with war. And I believe it was because the Romans did this on purpose, that they elevated Mars to become a god of war, because he was an indigenous god and he was a god of fertility, and they wanted to ground this energy in an indigenous fertility male character.
I see.
So of course there's not much proof of that, but that's what happened. That is what happened. They did take a fertility god and make him into the god of war and the patron, essentially, of the Roman army.
Yes.
So you can find some of this, like the way these archetypes were in fact engineered over periods of time. Like Dionysus probably wasn't originally all the things he became, which is like the patron of the protector of the goddess mysteries. I think he was originally just a male fertility god, and his secondary stuff was becoming the protector of the goddess's mysteries.
Yeah. I've also heard you say he had many epithets, and essentially he was equated with being the sun as well.
Yep, Dionysus was the dark sun. Yeah, yeah, and that the way you get to that is a little occulted. It's a little hard to find, but one of his epithets was in fact the dark sun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the same as the black sun? essentially.
Yes, it's the same as the black sun.
Okay.
And there's a heavy, that's the other thing is like Dionysus, we get this rising and falling god, so he actually has the attributes of Saturn as well. So
I was gonna
that's where
say
it gets
he.
weird because
Mm-hmm.
the epithet Aeon is an epithet for both Saturn and Dionysus. So this archetypal territory is often like it's dual, essentially, as I said. And Hades himself has got this dual aspect of being having the aspects of being an underworld god and also clearly being the sky god, who's he rules the realm essentially of the masculine realm. So there's all these inversions that are going on throughout this, and they're necessary and they're on purpose. It's just a matter of like wrapping your head around them, which is kind of the joy of all of this is kind of understanding how inversions work. And again, you have the upper world, you have the underworld, and it's like
But they're
it's
they're
much
mirrors.
easier to say
They're mirrors of each
what's that?
other, essentially. So
They're mirrors of each other.
okay. So Hades is,
Yep.
well, definitely the Lord of the underworld. In what sense
Yep.
is he also the sky god? Because that would be Uranus.
Yes, because if you look at the Zodiac, the signs that he rules are the signs in which the things move into abstraction. Essentially, if you consider that Hades realm starts with at Libra, as we're talking, um, the the metaphors you have to use here are like with Demeter again. So it's like he rules when the life force is not being reinvested down into the goddess essentially.
Uh-huh.
When during the
Yeah.
spring and summer, the masculine force is all going back into the goddess herself,
Right.
which is why you get male fertility gods then, and you don't have marriage. You don't have contracts. You don't have all the things that belong to the sky god in those seasons. Those are wild seasons. They're not civilized, essentially, according to this metaphorical framework. Once you get into Libra, then the masculine energy is essentially free
It's
of,
receding.
yeah,
Right. So in this, like in the springtime, all that energy is going into creating all of the greenery and all the fruits of the
yes,
goddess, right? So, but then
precisely.
once
Yep.
we hit Libra, you're at that point where dark and light, are, well, they're at that even point, but then the light is receding, right? And essentially the darkness takes over. So then that
Yeah.
energy, like you're saying, is freed up. That's what I'm following with you. So then,
Yes. Yep.
so the masculine
Yep.
force
So
is then freed up because it's not producing anything anymore. So it's
exactly. So you get abstractions, you get
okay.
ideas, you get things that are not grounded in the earth, essentially. But
Uh-huh.
they need to be a reflection of those things that are down, which is why you have each sign is connected to its opposite. It needs to be informed by its opposite. So
Right.
again, if you're
Yes.
like, if your ninth house beliefs are not in line with what people believe in the third house, what you're going to have is going to feel like foreign rule, essentially. It's going to
Mm.
feel like you're being like ruled by people who don't understand who maybe not your blood too. Like, because in the lower houses, you get things that feel like your family, that feel like the place you come from.
Mm. So,
In the houses above, you get the things that may feel foreign to you because they're abstractions and they need to be rooted down in what's in the ground. So this is how the zodiac works essentially.
mm.
Is like you have anywhere that you put your ascendant essentially, you're going to have that. So the dark houses below are going to represent what's not seen and what's in your body and what's in your
what's
blood
what's up
essentially.
close and personal, as you've
What's up close and personal, and what's up above is going to represent those things
what's
where you
public and
construct. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
they're transparent. They're things that you need to like deal with in the outer world, things you
Mm-hmm.
see.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how, and I'm glad we got to that point because it's like um, people could listen to this and be like, okay, how do I use this in astrology? And
Right.
that's
Let's
a whole another thing because this gives us a set of metaphors that are at the very root of everything. This is we've hit pay dirt here basically. We're at the basis of all of this. So we need to then apply these ideas to the chart. And like that's my next classes that I'm putting together are going to be, like how do I then use this when you've got things down to their most basic significations? How do you then reapply this? Because we took it out of the horoscope, basically, is what we did.
Yes.
We took it down to the thema mundi, which is where everything is going to be exposed. And it's also mythology.
Hmm.
And mythology is a different layer versus like what you get when you read like Vedius Valens or Firmicus Maternus is you get generally a categorized list of things that are downstream from these things. You know what I'm saying? This is what it looks like in the real world when it's like, when it's come out here versus like what it's going to be at the mythic root. You know what I'm saying? It's like the
Hmm.
archetypal level versus them telling us these are a lot of the ways that it can show up in a chart.
Yeah.
They don't go back to that mythic root, partially because they probably either didn't know or because they weren't allowed to.
Hmm.
Because if they went to the mystery cult initiations, you can't tell anybody or they might kill you. So, the fact that we haven't received a fully formed, textbook that tells us all this stuff is
Hmm.
not surprising.
No.
The other thing that I can
So,
say is that, if you look at Vedius Valens was looking at the work of two people called Nechepso and Petasiris.
right, right,
These were allegedly Egyptian astrologers who apparently had a huge amount of like a body of work.
right. Which sadly we don't have any
And
of the originals.
we don't have any of it.
Mm.
So one thing
So,
that's possible is that Nechepso and Petasiris may have been pre-horoscopic.
hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So they may have been talking about
An oral
a
tradition.
system, yeah, an oral tradition
Mm-hmm.
and something that was existing within what they call the Sabaean cults, these stellar cults.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and these were also almost definitely hereditary cults. These weren't like things you could just get into, and they followed royalty very closely because these were the
Hereditary is in bloodline. You had to be of a certain blood to
bloodline.
even get in. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Very,
yeah, yeah.
very,
So
very occulted, very guarded
yeah,
knowledge.
so they wouldn't just let you come in and like start practicing astrology. There was a
Mm.
good chance you had to be
Mm.
a bloodline member of a certain family that was in the Sabaean or stellar cult.
Mm. Right.
So this stuff is highly protected, and it's a lot of the royal bloodlines. I think some of these were like astrologers who were also royal bloodlines because Petasiris and Nechepso were royal. These
That's
were
what.
royal
Hmm.
people, and and I think they kept them. They probably married into these royal families because they wanted them, to serve them essentially. You know what I'm saying? So you keep
Hmm.
people that are that valuable and have that kind of tradition. You're not just gonna like let them do what the hell they want or like, these are like um, your scientists and you gotta make sure they're well taken care of and even like royalty, like minor royalty court, essentially like court people in the court. So this is, there's a lot of things that I think become pretty apparent when you start like digging deep into this stuff. Like um, I don't think that, we don't know a lot of stuff of what happened prior to like about the second century BC. And
Hmm.
the Zodiac may not have really existed before like maybe the third or the fourth century BC.
Sure.
Um, but as I say, I'm quite certain that I've hit like Homeric pay dirt essentially here.
Hmm.
Like we've got the basis of where the stories of these these the signs have come from and the
Hmm.
house systems come from. So yeah, so now it's just a matter of fleshing this out further and further.
Yeah. No, I think so too. You're definitely onto something there, Michael. So I congratulate you for that. You've really, yeah, made some extraordinary findings, I think. I mean, for me, I mean, this is very mind-blowing. I mean, I just started the course as well, and I'm very excited to continue to, deepen my knowledge in all of this. So for anybody else there listening that's interested in this, Michael's course is still open and available on his website, michaelmsuter.com. Michael, I thank you very much for coming on again. I would very much like to have you on again in the future if there's more you have to share, which I'm sure you do. But
Oh yeah,
Depending
yeah,
on how time goes, and we can coordinate that. I'd love to have you back on. I had quite a few more questions, and well, I probably always will because there's kind of endless things to talk about with you here. So maybe we'll
yeah.
get into the Decans more next time. I know we've already done some work on that, but maybe with some more of your findings to kind of elaborate a little bit more on that and get some maybe deeper meanings on that. And well, all of the mythology is always very fascinating to hear from your perspective, how you tie it all into the Zodiac and all. So thank you
Excellent.
very much. Um,
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
yeah, well, uh, this is uh, this is it now. We've come to the end. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology. Do check out Michael's Substack as well and his YouTube, which is just Michael's. Well, it's Michael's M Suter. What's your Substack now? Because it was Diamond Seed
Yeah,
Astrology.
it's M Suter dash or slash, I think.
Yeah, dash M
Diamond
Suter dash.
Diamond
Okay, or just
Diamond Seed
I'm sure
Astrology.
if you just look up Michael Suter, it comes up as well, but in the search. But anyway, yeah, just
Yeah,
definitely check out
yeah,
that because there's some very fascinating articles and videos he's been putting out, as well as the classes I already mentioned.
yeah,
So. All right,
yeah.
without anything else to say then, thank you everyone for listening to this episode. As above, so below, as within, as without.